Guys, welcome to my channel, Prasad Joshi Astro Universe. Today we are going to talk about the transit that is going to take place for Jupiter in the year 2022. Now, Jupiter's transit is going to take place for the next 1 year. So, Jupiter will remain in this sign from April 22 to April 23. Now, this transit of Jupiter is actually a very great relief for all of us because Jupiter is going to gain its desired dignity in its own sign. Pisces happens to be the sign of Jupiter itself, and this transit is also taking place along with the transit of Rahu and Ketu as well as Saturn. So 2022 is going to be a very important year for us because a lot of transits are taking place in this year. Now, Jupiter is going to influence most of those people who have Jupiter Mahadasha going on at this point of time. Apart from this, people who are under the influence of Jupiter Antardasha will also feel the changes very strongly when the Jupiter changes its position and moves from Aquarius into Pisces. Now, apart from that, one also needs to understand that one planet does not make or mar a person's position, but it is the collective influence that all these planets will together generate on a particular individual. Now, Jupiter represents a lot of pious things in life. Jupiter represents knowledge, wisdom, law, spirituality. It is an indication of your teachers, religion, philosophy, literature, and expansion of the characteristics of the houses in which the Jupiter steps into. We will have to assess each and every ascendant with the traits that Jupiter is going to evoke once it moves into that particular sign or house. Now, Jupiter transiting through this Pisces, it's basically transiting through the 12th sign of zodiac, because Pisces is the last sign in the zodiac belt. Now, this is very critical because Jupiter is also representing the same energies and things which are represented by the 12th house. So they are kind of complementary to each other. Now, Jupiter represents something similar to what the 12th house represents, which is your spirituality, the dimension, imagination, other worlds, lonely places. Right, and it also talks about your hidden talent, ability to work in by remaining hidden in the background. And the Pisces sign has 2.5 nakshatras in it, which is Purva Bhadrapad, Uttar Bhadrapad, and Revati. So now we are going to look for each ascendant one by one, and we are going to see how Jupiter is going to impact those signs. So let us first start with the Aries ascendant. Now, if you look at this chart, Aries, this is an Aries ascendant chart, and we have taken a position of somewhere in the middle of April 22 to showcase the right position of Jupiter as well as the other planets which are going to be there. So if you look at this chart, this is an Aries ascendant chart. Jupiter owns two houses, 9th house of spirituality and 12th house of, again, of loneliness or of foreign places. So for Aries people, it is basically ruling the religion house as well as the house of spirituality. So what it means is that for Aries ascendant, Jupiter is more of a knowledge and travel based planet, and we're talking about how it is placed in the chart of a native individual. Jupiter will be transitioning in the 12th house of foreign lands, spirituality. As you can see here, Jupiter is stationed in the 12th house during 15th of April. Right, so these are all the significators of 12th house. So you have foreign land, spirituality, losses, closures, and whenever any planet is transitioning through the 12th house, it evokes those characteristics, and depending on what that planet stands for in terms of significators, it gives results of those particular houses. So what will now happen is that whenever Jupiter is going to transit through the 12th house for Aries ascendant, it will mark a new period of beginning for Aries ascendant individuals. They will close out on some of the matters that are pending for them for a very long time, and those matters which are not being closed, these ascendant people will consider them to be closed and move ahead with their life. So this is an important transit for people who basically want to accomplish something new in terms of closure, as well as charting out a new course of direction in their lives. They will also become very interested in spirituality during this time frame, because Jupiter here going in its own sign and in a particular house, which is the 12th house, is going to evoke a lot of spiritual feelings in these individuals. So it is a very high possibility that they also will relocate to some foreign lands, but it depends a lot on what their Mahadasha and Antardasha is indicating at this point of time. At the same time, they also need to take care of their health, because this is also a house of hospitals and expenses. So it's a very good transit for people who are already in that spiritual mode, and because Pisces also represents the same energy, and if you are into spirituality, which unfortunately most of the people with Aries ascendant are not, but if they try to meditate during this transit, if they take up the energies which is represented by Pisces, then this transit can prove to be very, very important for them. Now let us look at the next ascendant, which is Taurus ascendant. Now coming to Taurus ascendant, Jupiter will be owning two signs. First is the 8th house, and second would be the 11th house. Now Jupiter will be moving into its own sign in the 11th house. Now this will be considered as a good transit for the Taurus ascendant, though Jupiter is the enemy of this ascendant lord, which is Venus. Now Jupiter in this particular ascendant rules the houses of occults, mystery, as well as all the significators that are indicated by the 8th house. Also, Jupiter is actually transitioning through the 11th house of gains, and as a result, the entire focus of these individuals during this transit will be on fulfilling their desires, as well as earning a lot through various streams of income. Now this will be a transit where they will be focused on making good gains, as I have indicated earlier, and Jupiter here will actually end up expanding the gains that they are aiming for. Now where can these gains come through? These gains can come through the elder siblings, because 11th house is also the house of elder siblings. It can also come through their circle of social network, and it can also come from the business benefits that may come through these social networks. Now for that, they must also be involved in some kind of a business in the first place. So if there are any changes that are going to take place in their life, or if they take to or resort to a business which is related to Jupiter, such as that of food, grains, or any other indicator that is done by Jupiter, then they will gain during this transit. Also, the gain can also come from the multinational corporations, provided they are working in these organizations. So there is a possibility that they can also relocate to a new place, because 11th house is basically 8 from the 4th house. So it does indicate some kind of a new kind of a settlement or relocation from them. There is a possibility that Jupiter can also bring them promotions or better opportunities in jobs, because 11th house is again second from the 10th house, and if these people are undergoing Jupiter Mahadasha, then chances are that they will get some new kind of opportunities in the jobs. Now this transit basically shows a person who can serve other people through his knowledge on religion, spirituality and philosophy. So although Jupiter is a owner of 8th house, which is not considered a great house in, if you look at it from a happiness point of an individual, but at the same time it is also owning 11th house, and with Jupiter going from the 11th house during this transit, it is a good transit for the Taurus base ascendants. Now let's move to the next sign, which is Gemini ascendant. For Gemini ascendant, Guru owns two very important houses. One is the 7th house, which is the house of partnerships, business and your spouse, and second is the 10th house, which is the house of karma, career or your superiors. Now Jupiter will be transitioning through the 10th house, and what it shows is that during this transit, Gemini ascendant natives will be completely focused on career and the recognition that they are going to get from their work. They can expect good recognition at the workplace, and it will also result in a increment of authority for them at the job sphere. Now overall this transit is going to expand their career authority and recognition. They can also expand their relationships with their bosses, because 10th house also indicates bosses, and they will get benefit from the authority figures at the career stage. Now 10th house also relates with father, and this can also bring some kind of a gains from their father, and there is a very high possibility that some of the natives may get into a business kind of a setup in their careers. They can also find relationship through work, or they can get into business with their relationship partner. So overall a very good transit for Gemini ascendant people. For Cancer ascendant people, Jupiter owns the 6th house, which is a house of daily routine, job, and it also owns the 9th house, which is the house of higher learning, teachers, law, religion and philosophy. Now it is a transit where a person can be inclined towards higher learning and higher education, because Jupiter is transitioning through the 9th house. These people will also be focused on reading about religion and philosophy, and they will also be interested in taking far distant travel. They can get into traveling which is more related to pilgrimages or religious places, and trying to meet people from different cultures. These people may also end up finding a teacher or a guru for themselves, and they will learn a lot from these people during this time frame. Education that they take up during this time will also help them to grow in their career eventually. Maybe in the next transit, when Jupiter moves to the 10th house, they will get a lot of benefits from the education that they undertake during this time frame, that is in 2022. Now 9th house is also 12th house from their career, right? So it is a negation of the 10th house. So it's also a house of a loss of your career and authority, or at least it shows some kind of a stress which these people will face around the authority figures at their work. And they may also face a similar kind of a problem with father at their home. So when you look at it from a career perspective, it doesn't look like a very good transit for Cancer ascendants. Now they can also get into some kind of a relationship with someone who is not from their culture and ethnicity, but it's a good transit for gaining and sharing knowledge. and they should also be very careful about not getting into any conflicts in the matters that are related to belief or religion, and they should also be very careful about their health at this point of time. They should make sure that they are sharing their knowledge and sticking to a regular or rigorous kind of a routine during this transit. Overall, it's a average kind of a transit for these people. For Leo ascendant, Jupiter rules the fifth house, which is the house of education, creativity, children, and the eighth house, which is a house of hidden gains, benefits that arise because of marriage, with eighth house being second from the seventh house, which is the house of spouse. This house also indicates occult, mysticism, research related work, as well as astrology. So if they focus their efforts on the house significators of 8th, which is research, occult, mysticism, then the chances are that they'll really do well during this transit. And in fact, a lot of people, depending on what Mahadasha they are going through, will see a renewed interest in the significators that are shown by the 8th house. Sometimes it also shows a life of transformation, because Jupiter represents expansion and the 8th house also represents major changes. So these people can also undergo a drastic transformation during this transit of Jupiter. Now, these people also need to be very careful while they are driving or traveling, because this house is also the houses of accident or any sudden event. It's a very good time for these people if they want to study occult or if they want to learn about stock market, because we see that 8th house is something that gives you very strong gains or very sudden losses also from the stock market, and in this case Jupiter is the significator of both 5th and 8th houses in their birth chart. So yes, a great time for you to learn something about stock market and benefit from it. It would be a good time to maintain a long distance relationship for the time being for these ascendants, because Saturn will also transit through the 11th sign after April. So it's going to stay in the Aquarius sign from April to June in 2022, and from January 23 it will be full-fledgedly in the sign of Aquarius. So relationship can go for a toss during this time frame. So people of this ascendant should be ready and receptive for some major changes in their overall life. They can have a good amount of business benefits that can come through if they have a business in the first place, and if their Jupiter is in a good dignity in the birth chart. Now for Virgo ascendant, Jupiter owns the 4th house, which is the house of home, happiness and mother, and it also owns the 7th house, which is the house of business, spouse, and any kind of a partnership. So this time, since Jupiter is transiting through the 7th house, the whole focus of these individuals would be on sustaining the relations, business and partnerships. The whole focus will be on the relationship matters, either on getting a new kind of a relationship or maintaining the existing one. And they should also try to accommodate as much as possible with their spouses or partners, rather than getting into unnecessary arguments with them. Now it also shows that the person can get into a home-based business, because Jupiter also owns their 4th house in their birth chart, and it can also be a good time to start your business where you share knowledge with others. So you can basically go for a teaching business from your home, provided the ascendant and the Mahadasha is also supporting it. It's possible that their reach amongst masses gets expanded, because again Jupiter is passing through 7th house, which is also represents your opponents or your clients. So they may get some kind of a visibility amongst their people. Jupiter being the key significator of expansion, they may see some kind of a public image of that of a guide or a counselor or a learned person, and they will see that they are able to reach out to many people through their knowledge and guidance. Now coming to the Libra ascendant, Jupiter owns the third and sixth house. Now third house is the house of travel, communication, efforts, and sixth house is again the house of daily work, routine, dispute, disease, and obstacles. Now the problem with Libra ascendant is this, that Guru is not considered a good planet for them because it owns both the difficult houses, which are house number 3 and 6. Now unless these people are undergoing a Jupiter Mahadasha, where Jupiter is now transitioning through the 6th house, the chances of them getting a job are remote. Unless they are going through a Jupiter Mahadasha, they will see a lot of hurdles in their daily work routine. They'll have disputes at the workplace, and they need to be very careful about the disease. They can get diseases related to Jupiter because Jupiter is transitioning through its own house of 6, and they will also face some kind of obstacles or conflicts in the relationship matters. Depending on what Mahadasha they are going through, if they are going through the Jupiter Mahadasha itself, then it is possible that they can grow at their workplace. Otherwise, the reverse decision or reverse results would be seen. Now it's not a great transit if you look at it from a relationship point of view, and it will be very good for these people if they keep their expectations in check as far as the relationship matters are concerned. They also need to be very careful, and they need to take a good care of their health. The focus will be fully on the significations of that are related to the 6th house. Jupiter being passing through the 6th house would mean that they may face some kind of a diseases, disputes, and obstacles, and they could also be dealing with some kind of a loan or litigation matters as indicated by the 6th house. So they will see that they are staying away from their spouse most of the time, because it could be because of the pressures that they see in their job, or they are traveling in their jobs. But it's a great time if they are able to take up education that is related to law or medicine, or they can take some kind of a courses which enhances their key skills in these areas or in the significations that are ruled by Jupiter. They can also serve people because Jupiter is passing through the 6th house in the areas that are indicated by Jupiter. So they can also try to build their knowledge in the areas related to medical or legal domain. So overall, not a very good transit for the Libra ascendant people. So for Scorpio ascendant, Jupiter rules the 2nd house of speech, wealth, family, and the 5th house, which again is related to education, kids, intelligence, and speculation. Now if you look at this transit, Jupiter is actually shaping up to be a planet that will give them knowledge as well as some new kind of a belief. Since education is Jupiter is transitioning through the 5th house of education, romance, and creativity, they can give desires of relationship and things that can manifest as Jupiter is transitioning in the own sign. Now this transit also shows that person can be more focused on education, creativity, and the matters related to their child, because 5th house is an indicator of child. So it's also a great time for educating yourself in the field of interest or hobbies that are indicated by Jupiter. So again, great time to undergo some kind of an education that enhances your skill set. And those who have children will also be focusing on children. It will be a good time for them to start a business that is related to knowledge sharing. This is a time frame that indicates a change in career, as fifth house is 8th from 10th house. So these people will experience a transformation as far as the career related matters are concerned. And if the Mahadasha is allowing, they can also plan for a childbirth. Next is the Sagittarius ascendant. For Sagittarius ascendant, Jupiter rules the first house of self as well as fourth house of mother and home comforts. Now Jupiter owns both the quadrants in case of Sagittarius ascendant, and since it's passing through the 12th house, it is going to be a very good transit for them. Jupiter is basically a home as well as a life related planet for them, because it determines their life path during the time frame of its own Mahadasha or Antardasha. Now Jupiter is transitioning through the fourth house of home, mother or peace of mind. So this is actually a great time for them to acquire a house property or any real estate property, and they will see that they will experience expansion as far as the valuation of this property is concerned, and this property will benefit them immensely if they purchase it in the next 1 year moving from April 22 to April 23. They may also renovate some kind of their existing property as well. Focus will be firmly on the attributes that are showcased by the fourth house, that is property, mother and home related matters. These people will love to stay at their homes during this time frame, and it is also a good transit for the spiritual pursuits, because Guru transitioning through the fourth house will actually aspect their 12th house as well. So they will see a increase in the spiritual interest during this transit. This also showcases that they may start some kind of a home based business, that too educational in nature, because Jupiter is a significator of education. Now this next 1 year transit from April 22 to 23 can also revolve around their home, mother, homeland and real estate properties. During this time frame, they may also see, depending on what life stage they are, they may see the kids leaving their homes, because Guru is transitioning from 4th house, which is 12th from 5th. So they will see a negation of the 5th house matters. In this case, they will see their kids going away from them. So overall, a good transit for the Sagittarius ascendant people. Now next is Capricorn ascendant. For Capricorn ascendant, Jupiter rules over the 12th house of foreign lands and 3rd house of travel and courage. Jupiter is going to transit through the 3rd house of communication, travels, efforts, actions and business. So this shows that they will be interested in collecting information and work hard on their business communication and counseling skills. Now they'll focus on their own hobbies and skills during this time frame, because 3rd house again showcases these factors, and the things or the events that are related to younger siblings would remain in the focus. They will also be seen as a teacher or people who will preach a lot to others during this time frame, and I think it is a very good transit, because the more effort these people put in, the more this planet is going to reward them during this transit. This transit can also expand their willpower and courage, but they should be very careful about their wealth and where they invest this wealth in during this time frame. We can also say that they may also be involved in buying or selling their real estate property, because again 4th is the house of properties and 3rd is the negation of that, so they can sell or get rid of the property that they already have. At the same time, they can also benefit from their younger siblings. Now coming to Aquarius ascendant, for Aquarius ascendant, Jupiter rules over the second house as well as 11th house, which are both the houses of wealth and gains. So this transit is going to prove a good transit for these people because they'll be able to save a lot of money during this transit. Jupiter is also significator of the second house in their birth chart, and as a result they will be able to not only earn a lot of wealth gains coming from the 11th house, but they will also be able to save a lot of money during this transit. So, and Jupiter is obviously a significator of expansion, so their wealth will also expand during this time frame. Now they also need to work on devising new ways on saving their wealth, and this can bring expansion in their family and wealth related matters. Since Jupiter is transitioning through the second house, there can be expansion in their family through either through marriage or through childbirth, depending on what Madasha they are going through. But financially it is an excellent transition for people of Aquarius ascendant because Jupiter rules both the houses of wealth, that is second and 11th, and they will earn wealth through the significators of Jupiter, which happens to be education, teaching and counseling, but the overall focus during this transit will be on family and wealth. Now coming to the final ascendant, which happens to be the Pisces ascendant. Now Jupiter will be transitioning through the first house, which indicates a change in their thought process and something that impacts their physical body, as well as a significator of the 10th house, which happens to be a career and karma related house. Now this transit could be very good for these people because Jupiter is passing through the first house and this is owned by the first house, so they will develop a lot of interest in spirituality. They will work towards looking at self-evaluation and they will develop a lot of new hypothesis or learning on their own. Is basically passing through the first house of self and the life path, so focus will be lost from all the areas of life, and the only place where they'll be focusing would be that of self. They would want to know why they're here in this world and what is their true life path. So this can bring a new optimism in their life and they will work with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. So Jupiter basically rules the house of career as well for these people, so they will see that they have a good amount of wealth that is coming through their house of career as well as from their father, but they will see an overall expansion in their life during this transit. They may put on a lot of weight because Jupiter transitioning through first house would mean that they will face those kind of issues and they will struggle to control their weight. Jupiter being a significator of expansion will expand their body and they will become fat during this time frame. Jupiter is also aspecting the 7th house, so the chances of them getting married during this time frame is also very strong, and it's a big possibility that by the time this transit is through and Jupiter has left Pisces, their life, their career would be completely changed and transpired, and they are able to figure out what they want to do in their life, and as a result they take up those vocations which they are interested in and probably wanted to pursue from a very long time. So this can be considered as a very good awakening transit for them. They will get to know who they are and they will work on self-learning or knowing about themselves. So this will be a very meaningful transit for them, a great or a renewed beginning, but they need to be very careful regarding their wealth related matters. But overall, an excellent transit for the Pisces related ascendant. So were the 12 ascendants and how Jupiter will benefit them during this time frame. Do let me know your feedback, and if you think that this video has benefited you, please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching.